Allah did not create you to be fragile in a cruel world. He did not give you a heart of iman so you could spend your life shrinking, apologizing, and breaking yourself for people who do not protect your soul. You were created to be strong, strong in faith, strong in boundaries, strong in purpose. This reminder is for every woman who has been too gentle with those who were never gentle with her. For every woman who kept forgiving while being wounded. For every woman who confused softness with strength. Today, that ends. One, softness without strength is self-destruction. Softness without strength is not virtue. It is vulnerability, left unprotected. And Allah never created the believing woman to live unprotected in a world that is often careless with gentle hearts. Many women are taught from childhood that to be kind is to be quiet, that to be patient is to endure harm, that to be soft is to allow themselves to be wounded without protest. But Islam never taught the believer to dissolve her dignity in the name of compassion. The heart that Allah entrusted to you is an amana, a sacred responsibility, and abandoning it to mistreatment is not piety, it is negligence of what Allah has honored. When a woman becomes soft without strength, she becomes a target for exploitation, manipulation, and emotional erosion. Her kindness becomes a tool others use, her patience becomes permission for abuse, and her silence becomes the space where her worth slowly disappears. True softness in Islam is not passive, it is anchored in self-respect, protected by boundaries, and guided by wisdom. A heart that is gentle but unguarded will not remain gentle for long. It will become broken, bitter, and exhausted. Allah does not want that for you. He wants you to carry mercy without being crushed by it, to love without being consumed by it, to give without losing yourself. Strength is not the opposite of softness, it is its protector. And when softness loses its protector, it does not become more beautiful, it becomes destructive. A woman who remains soft without building strength around her soul slowly disappears inside the lives of others. She learns to ignore her pain, to preserve their comfort, to silence her needs to keep the peace, to surrender her boundaries to avoid conflict. Over time, she does not even recognize herself anymore. She looks at her life and wonders where her joy went, where her voice went, where her light went. It did not vanish overnight. It was surrendered, piece by piece, in the name of being nice, understanding, and patient. But Allah never asked you to bleed so others could feel at ease. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that the believer is not one who allows himself to be humiliated. He is gentle, yes, but he is also dignified, firm, and aware of his worth before Allah. When you remain soft, without strength, you allow the world to define you instead of Allah. And the world does not protect what it does not value. Strength is what teaches people how to treat you. It is what tells the world where your limits lie, where your heart begins, and where your dignity will not be crossed. Without that strength, softness becomes self-erasure. And self-erasure is not humility. It is spiritual harm. Many women confuse being strong with being harsh, and being gentle with being weak. But Islam teaches something far more balanced and beautiful. Strength does not make you cruel, it makes you clear. It makes you stable. It makes your kindness intentional instead of desperate. A strong woman is not loud, aggressive, or hardened. She is calm, anchored, and unshakable. Her softness flows from a place of certainty, not fear. Her mercy is guided by wisdom, not emotional hunger. When a woman is only soft, she gives too much, forgives too quickly, and accepts too little for herself. She carries everyone's burdens while neglecting her own soul. Over time, this creates exhaustion, resentment, and spiritual emptiness. The heart begins to feel used, unseen, and unloved. But when strength enters her life, everything changes. Her yes becomes powerful, her no becomes respected, her presence becomes steady. She learns that protecting her heart is not selfish. It is obedience to Allah who created that heart. Strength allows her softness to remain beautiful without being destroyed by the world. Softness without strength also distorts a woman's understanding of patience. She begins to believe that sabr means enduring any form of pain, disrespect, or injustice in silence. But patience in Islam is not the tolerance of harm, it is perseverance upon truth. It is remaining upright when tested, not remaining silent when violated. A woman who remains soft without strength stays in situations that slowly break her faith, her self-worth, and her sense of purpose. She tells herself she is being patient while her heart withers. She calls it loyalty while her soul collapses. Allah never designed sabr to destroy the servant. He designed it to elevate her. And elevation cannot occur when the heart is being crushed by what Allah never approved. Strength gives patience its proper shape. It teaches the woman when to endure and when to walk away, when to forgive and when to protect herself, when to stay and when to leave. Without strength, patience becomes imprisonment. With strength, patience becomes power. A woman who lives only in softness becomes emotionally dependent on others for her worth. She needs constant reassurance, validation, and approval because she has not built a foundation of strength within her relationship with Allah. When people withdraw, disappoint, or abandon her, she collapses because she built her identity on their presence. Strength teaches her something different, that her worth was written by Allah before anyone ever knew her name, that her value does not increase when someone stays and does not decrease when someone leaves. Strength reconnects her to her Creator, and in that connection she becomes whole. When a woman becomes whole, she stops begging for love, chasing affection, and tolerating mistreatment. Her softness becomes a gift she offers, not a weakness people exploit. Softness without strength also damages a woman's future. She settles for relationships that drain her, environments that stunt her growth, and dreams that are far smaller than what Allah intended for her. She chooses comfort over destiny, familiarity over growth, and safety over purpose. Strength awakens her to the reality that Allah created her for more peace, more clarity, more impact, more faith. It gives her the courage to walk away from what no longer aligns with her soul. Without strength, she stays trapped in cycles that repeat the same pain with different faces. With strength, she breaks the cycle. A strong woman still cries. She still feels deeply. She still loves fiercely. But she no longer sacrifices herself on the altar of other people's comfort. Her softness is now guarded by wisdom. She chooses where to give, when to open, and how much to invest. She no longer gives her heart to those who cannot carry it. She no longer builds her life around people who cannot protect her peace. Strength teaches her that love does not require self-destruction. Mercy does not require self-betrayal. And kindness does not require silence in the face of harm. This is why softness without strength is self-destruction. Not because softness is wrong, but because softness alone cannot survive this world. Allah did not send you into this life defenseless. He gave you faith to anchor you, wisdom to guide you, and strength to protect you. When you combine strength with softness, you become a woman who is gentle yet unbreakable, compassionate yet firm, loving yet wise. You no longer bleed for people who will not bandage your wounds. You no longer carry what Allah never placed on your shoulders. You rise. And this rise is only the beginning. There comes a moment when a woman finally understands that the cost of remaining soft without strength is greater than the fear of becoming firm. She realizes that her tears have not protected her, her silence has not healed her, and her patience has not changed those who continue to wound her. In that realization, something inside her awakens. It is not anger, it is clarity. She begins to see her life the way Allah sees it, precious, purposeful, and worthy of protection. She stops explaining herself to those who refuse to understand her value. She stops shrinking to make others comfortable. She stops carrying guilt for protecting her peace. Strength does not make her less loving. It makes her love more wisely. Her heart no longer collapses when people disappoint her because it is anchored in something stronger than human approval. She begins to walk with a calm authority that comes from knowing who she is before Allah, and that calm changes everything. When strength finally enters her life, the past no longer controls her future. The wounds that once defined her begin to transform into wisdom. The pain that once weakened her becomes the very thing that teaches her discernment. She no longer rushes into connections. She no longer confuses attention for love or familiarity for safety. Her decisions are no longer driven by fear of being alone, but by certainty in Allah's presence. She begins to protect her time, her energy, her heart, and her faith with the seriousness they deserve. And in that protection, she discovers peace, not the fragile peace of temporary comfort, but the deep peace of alignment with Allah's will. A woman who has learned strength understands that not every door deserves to remain open. Some doors lead to growth, and some lead to destruction. Softness without strength leaves all doors unlocked. Strength teaches her which ones to close with grace and which ones to walk through with confidence. She stops forcing relationships that drain her soul. She stops explaining her worth to those who cannot see it. She stops negotiating with what Allah has already made clear. Her life becomes simpler, quieter, and more focused. The noise fades, the chaos settles, and in that calm, her heart begins to heal in ways she never thought possible. The believer who walks this path begins to experience a different kind of confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but certainty. She knows that her dignity is not something she must demand from the world. It is something Allah has already given her. She does not compete for attention. She does not beg for affection. She does not accept what dishonors her soul. Her presence becomes light, and people feel it. Not because she is harsh, but because she is whole. Strength has allowed her softness to shine without being consumed. Over time, she notices something beautiful. The right people are drawn to her life, not those who drain her, but those who respect her boundaries. Not those who use her kindness, but those who value her heart. Strength becomes the filter that removes what does not belong and invites what does. And she finally understands why Allah allowed her to go through seasons of loneliness, disappointment, and pain. He was teaching her how to become this woman, a woman whose heart is protected, whose faith is anchored, and whose future is no longer built on broken foundations. Softness without strength once kept her stuck in cycles of heartbreak. Strength now moves her into seasons of stability. She no longer lives in survival mode. She no longer walks on emotional edges. Her life is no longer built on anxiety and exhaustion. Instead, it is built on trust in Allah, obedience to His guidance, and commitment to her own spiritual growth. This is the woman Allah honors. This is the woman the world cannot break. And when she looks back at the version of herself that once gave too much, stayed too long, and tolerated too much, she does not feel shame. She feels gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons. Gratitude for the growth. Gratitude for the strength Allah planted inside her when she was too weak to see it. She knows now that every hardship was shaping her into someone stronger, wiser, and more grounded in faith. This is the transformation that occurs when a woman stops being soft without strength. She does not lose her compassion. She does not lose her mercy. She does not lose her heart. She finally learns how to protect it. And in that protection, she becomes the woman Allah always intended her to be: gentle, dignified, resilient, and unbreakable. 2. Allah honors the woman who protects her heart. Allah honors the woman who understands the sacredness of her heart and refuses to hand it to those who cannot carry its weight. The heart is not merely an emotional center. It is the seat of faith, intention, and spiritual life. When a woman learns to protect her heart, she is not becoming distant or cold, she is becoming obedient. Allah entrusted her with that heart as an amana, and honoring that trust is an act of worship. The woman who guards her heart begins to choose her words carefully, her relationships wisely, and her environment intentionally. She no longer exposes her soul to spaces that weaken her iman or to people who diminish her sense of worth. In doing so, she aligns herself with Allah's divine design for dignity, stability, and inner peace. Her life becomes calmer, her decisions clearer, and her spirit lighter. The noise of the world loses its power over her, and the opinions of people no longer shake her foundation. This is the first sign of Allah's honor, the gift of inner steadiness. When a woman protects her heart, she begins to experience a new kind of strength, not the strength of dominance or control, but the strength of certainty. She no longer rushes to explain herself, justify her choices, or seek validation from those who cannot see her value. Her heart becomes anchored in her relationship with Allah, and from that anchor flows confidence, patience, and clarity. The world may misunderstand her boundaries, but Allah understands her intention, and that is enough. This woman no longer measures her worth by how much she is needed or how often she is praised. She measures it by how faithfully she is living in alignment with her Creator. She becomes selective, not because she thinks she is better than others, but because she understands what her heart requires to remain healthy and whole. She does not fear being alone, because she has discovered that closeness to Allah fills every empty space, and in that discovery, Allah honors her with peace that cannot be purchased, borrowed, or stolen. The woman who protects her heart learns that not every emotion deserves immediate expression, and not every attachment deserves lifelong commitment. She begins to observe herself, reflect deeply, and choose intentionally. This discipline of the heart is one of the highest forms of self-respect. She no longer allows her feelings to control her actions. Instead, she allows her faith to guide her emotions. She prays before she reacts, seeks wisdom before she decides, and consults Allah before she commits. In this process, Allah refines her character and elevates her spirit. Protecting the heart does not make her unloving. It makes her love with purpose. Her love becomes sincere, steady, and rooted in goodness rather than desperation or fear of abandonment. She stops pouring into people who continuously drain her and begins investing in spaces that nourish her soul. Allah replaces emotional chaos with tranquility and confusion with understanding. Her heart, once burdened with worry, now finds rest in remembrance. She realizes that her heart is not meant to be a battlefield of constant emotional struggle. It is meant to be a sanctuary of faith, hope, and reliance on Allah. When she closes the doors to harmful influences, Allah opens doors to spiritual growth and meaningful connection. The change is not immediate, but it is steady and profound. Over time, she becomes a woman of calm presence, gentle strength, and unwavering faith. This transformation is Allah's honor manifesting in her life. It is the honor of stability after chaos, clarity after confusion, and purpose after pain. And this honor is not visible to everyone, but it is deeply felt within her soul. As the woman continues to protect her heart, she becomes increasingly sensitive to the state of her iman. She notices when her faith feels heavy, when her spirit feels unsettled, and when her inner peace begins to fade. Instead of ignoring these signs, she responds with action. She turns to prayer, seeks forgiveness, and renews her connection with Allah. This attentiveness becomes a form of spiritual intelligence. She understands that her heart is a mirror reflecting the state of her relationship with her Creator. She no longer tolerates conversations that poison her thoughts or environments that weaken her resolve. She distances herself from anything that pulls her away from Allah, not with bitterness, but with wisdom. She learns that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away quietly. In those moments, Allah draws closer to her. He fills the spaces that once felt empty with reassurance, guidance, and light. The woman who protects her heart begins to walk with a quiet confidence. Her steps are no longer rushed by fear or driven by anxiety. She trusts Allah's timing and embraces His plan. Even when the path ahead is unclear, she moves forward with certainty that her Lord is guiding her. That certainty becomes her shield against doubt and her source of courage in moments of weakness. Through this journey, Allah honors her with resilience. She no longer breaks under pressure. She bends, adapts, and rises stronger. Each trial refines her, and each challenge deepens her trust. She becomes a woman whose heart is both tender and unbreakable, a rare and beautiful balance shaped by divine care. With time, the woman who protects her heart begins to notice the shift in the people who enter her life. Those who thrive on chaos and emotional instability drift away. Those who value sincerity, respect, and faith are drawn closer. Allah rearranges her world gently, aligning it with her spiritual growth. The relationships she keeps become fewer but deeper, quieter but more meaningful. She learns that quality always outweighs quantity when it comes to matters of the heart. She also becomes patient with herself. She understands that healing is a journey, not a destination. Some days she feels strong and clear. Other days she feels tired and uncertain. In both states, she remains anchored to Allah. She speaks to Him openly, placing her worries in His hands and trusting Him with her future. This vulnerability before Allah becomes her greatest strength. Protecting the heart also teaches her to forgive, not to excuse harm, but to release the burden of resentment. She learns that carrying anger poisons the soul, while forgiveness frees it. In forgiving, she does not reopen doors that should remain closed. She simply allows her heart to heal. Allah rewards this inner work with emotional lightness and spiritual elevation. She begins to live with intention. Every decision, every relationship, every goal is filtered through her commitment to protect her heart and strengthen her faith. This intentional living transforms her daily life into a continuous act of worship. Even in ordinary moments, she feels Allah's presence guiding her steps. This is the honor Allah bestows upon the woman who protects her heart. A life of meaning, balance, and enduring peace. The woman who guards her heart gradually becomes immune to the chaos of the world. She still feels the storms of life, but they no longer control her. She stands firm in her values and grounded in her beliefs. When others panic, she remains composed. When others despair, she holds on to hope. Her stability becomes a source of comfort for those around her. She understands that the heart is not something to gamble with. It is the core of her being, the place where faith resides and intentions are formed. By protecting it, she preserves her spiritual identity. She is no longer swayed by trends, pressure, or fear of missing out. She chooses what aligns with her purpose, even when the choice is difficult. Over time, she develops deep self-awareness. She recognizes her triggers, her weaknesses, and her strengths. She works on herself with patience and compassion, knowing that growth is a lifelong process. Each improvement she makes is an offering to Allah, a reflection of her desire to become the best version of herself. Allah honors this effort. He opens doors she never imagined, brings opportunities she never expected, and places peace in her heart that no hardship can steal. Her journey becomes a testimony of what happens when a woman takes responsibility for her inner world and entrusts her outer world to Allah. The more she protects her heart, the more she realizes that true strength comes from within. She no longer fears rejection, abandonment, or failure. She understands that everything in life is temporary except her relationship with Allah. This awareness frees her from unhealthy attachments and unrealistic expectations. She becomes content with what Allah has written for her and hopeful about what He has prepared. She finds beauty in simplicity. Her joy no longer depends on external circumstances. It flows from her inner connection with Allah. Even in difficult times, she carries light within her. That light guides her, comforts her, and inspires others. Allah honors her with clarity of vision. She sees her life as a journey of growth, not a series of losses. Every experience becomes a lesson, every setback a stepping stone. She trusts that Allah's wisdom surpasses her understanding and that every delay has a purpose. She no longer asks, "Why me?" Instead, she asks, "What is Allah teaching me?" This shift in perspective transforms her entire life. She walks forward with gratitude, humility, and unshakable faith. Through protecting her heart, the woman becomes deeply connected to her inner self. She listens to her soul, respects her needs, and nurtures her spiritual health. She makes space for prayer, reflection, and gratitude. These moments become her refuge from the noise of the world. She no longer allows guilt to control her decisions. She understands that setting boundaries is not selfish, it is necessary. When she says no to what harms her, she is saying yes to what heals her. This wisdom brings balance to her life. Allah honors her with a sense of purpose. She knows why she wakes up each day. She knows what she stands for and where she is going. Even when the path is difficult, she continues walking with trust and determination. Her life becomes a reflection of her faith. Her actions, words, and choices all point toward Allah. This alignment brings her a deep sense of fulfillment. As she continues this journey, the woman becomes an example of grace and strength. People see her calm, her clarity, her confidence. They feel her presence and sense her peace. They may not understand her choices, but they respect her character. She understands that protecting her heart is not about building walls. It is about building wisdom. She opens her heart where there is goodness and closes it where there is harm. She loves deeply, but she loves wisely. Allah honors her with enduring peace, a peace that remains even when life is uncertain. This peace becomes her greatest treasure. The woman who protects her heart eventually reaches a place where she no longer fears the future because she has entrusted it completely to Allah. She understands that nothing meant for her will ever miss her, and nothing that misses her was ever meant to stay. This certainty settles her soul and quiets her anxieties. She stops running after what she has lost and starts walking toward what Allah is preparing. Her trust becomes unshakable, not because life becomes easy, but because her faith becomes strong. Every disappointment deepens her reliance on Allah. Every unanswered question strengthens her patience. She learns that surrender is not weakness, it is alignment with divine wisdom. And in that alignment, Allah honors her with emotional stability that no storm can destroy. She also learns the sacred art of discernment. Not every invitation is a blessing. Not every opportunity is meant for her. Not every voice deserves her attention. She becomes selective with her energy, her time, and her emotional investment. She knows that what she allows into her heart shapes the direction of her life. When she protects her heart, she is protecting her destiny. Allah honors that awareness by opening doors that are in harmony with her purpose and closing those that would have led her astray. This woman does not measure success by applause, approval, or status. She measures it by her closeness to Allah, the peace in her chest, and the integrity of her choices. She no longer compares her path to others because she trusts the one who wrote her story. She knows that Allah's plan for her is perfectly tailored to her soul. Even when the road is long and lonely, she walks with hope because her heart is secure in Allah's promise. Over time, Allah begins to elevate her in ways that cannot be explained by effort alone. Her character shines, her presence inspires, her life becomes a testimony of quiet strength. People sense that she carries something different, not arrogance, not pride, but divine tranquility. This is the honor Allah grants to the woman who protects her heart, a light that does not flicker when the winds of life grow strong. She no longer needs to prove herself. She no longer seeks permission to exist as she is. She stands firmly in the identity Allah has given her. Her heart is not for public consumption. It is a sacred space reserved for faith, sincerity, and devotion. And Allah guards that space with His mercy. The woman who protects her heart becomes deeply grateful. She recognizes how far Allah has brought her. She remembers the days of confusion, pain, and emotional exhaustion, and now she lives in clarity. This gratitude softens her heart without weakening it. It humbles her without diminishing her. She walks with her head high and her soul bowed in worship. Her story becomes one of transformation, from brokenness to balance, from fear to faith, from dependence on creation to complete reliance on the Creator. Allah honors her not just with blessings, but with understanding. She knows why certain things had to fall apart. She knows why certain doors had to close. She knows why she had to learn how to stand alone. All of it was preparing her for this woman she has become. In the end, she realizes that protecting her heart was the most powerful decision she ever made, because when she protected her heart for Allah, Allah protected her life in ways she never imagined. And this is the divine exchange. You guard what Allah entrusted to you, and Allah guards what matters most to you. 3. Stop tolerating what is breaking you. There comes a moment in a woman's life when she must face the truth with courage. The pain she is carrying is no longer a test, it has become a warning. Islam does not ask the believer to remain in harm while calling it patience. Sabr is not staying in what destroys you. Sabr is remaining upright upon truth while seeking what brings you closer to Allah. When you continue tolerating what breaks your heart, weakens your iman, and drains your spirit, you are not being virtuous, you are being wounded. Allah did not create your soul to be crushed under emotional, psychological, or spiritual weight that He never placed upon you. There is a difference between enduring hardship for Allah and allowing yourself to be repeatedly harmed by what Allah did not command you to accept. When you ignore this difference, your heart slowly loses its light. You begin to feel tired without knowing why, distant without understanding how, and empty without realizing what is missing. That emptiness is your soul telling you it is time to stop accepting what is breaking you and start protecting what Allah entrusted to you. Many women stay in harmful situations because they confuse loyalty with righteousness. They believe that walking away is abandonment, that setting boundaries is selfish, and that choosing themselves is sinful. But Islam never taught you to destroy yourself to preserve relationships. The Prophet ﷺ taught dignity, balance, and self-respect. When something consistently causes you pain, anxiety, and spiritual decline, it is not a blessing, it is a burden. And Allah does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. But He also does not command you to carry what is not yours. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to choose safety. You are allowed to choose a life that nurtures your faith instead of eroding it. When you tolerate what is breaking you, you delay your healing. You delay your growth. You delay the version of yourself that Allah is trying to bring into existence. There is a silent cost to remaining where you are wounded. Your heart becomes heavy. Your prayer becomes distracted. Your joy becomes fragile. And over time, You begin to believe that this suffering is normal, that this is simply what life is supposed to feel like. But that is not the life Allah promised the believer. He promised tranquility in remembrance, light in guidance, and peace in surrender. When your environment steals these from you, something is wrong. And when you continue to tolerate it, the damage spreads quietly into every part of your being. You wake up tired, you sleep exhausted, and your spirit feels constantly under pressure. This is not spiritual growth, this is spiritual harm. Allah calls the believer to rise, not to rot in pain. A woman who finally stops tolerating what is breaking her begins to rediscover her strength. She starts listening to her heart again. She begins asking herself honest questions. Why am I here? What is this costing my faith? What is this doing to my soul? And when she answers truthfully, she finds the courage to move, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with clarity and trust in Allah. She understands that leaving what harms her is not a rejection of others, it is obedience to her Creator. And when she takes that step, even if it feels terrifying, Allah meets her with support she never expected. Allah does not bless the believer by keeping her trapped in pain. He blesses her by guiding her out of it. The path may be difficult, and the transition may feel lonely, but the destination is always lighter than the place she left behind. When you stop tolerating what is breaking you, Allah replaces confusion with clarity, weakness with stability, and fear with faith. You begin to breathe again. You begin to pray again with presence. You begin to live again with purpose. Many women remain in destructive cycles because they fear the unknown more than they fear the pain they already know. But the pain you recognize is still pain, and the future Allah prepares for you is always better than the prison you choose out of fear. When you walk away from what breaks you for the sake of Allah, He never leaves you empty-handed. He replaces what you lost with something purer, stronger, and more aligned with your soul. Stopping tolerance is not cruelty, it is wisdom. It is the moment you decide that your iman matters more than anyone's approval, that your heart matters more than anyone's comfort, and that your relationship with Allah matters more than any relationship that leads you away from Him. This decision does not make you hard, it makes you whole. A woman who chooses to stop tolerating what breaks her becomes a different person. Her presence changes, her boundaries strengthen, her faith deepens, and her life begins to reflect the dignity Allah always placed within her. She no longer begs for respect, she embodies it. She no longer fears being alone, she fears being lost in what harms her. When Allah sees a servant protecting her soul for His sake, He protects her life in return. He opens doors that were never visible before. He sends people who respect her heart. He grants peace that does not depend on circumstances. And she finally understands that the pain she once endured was not her destiny, it was her lesson. So stop tolerating what is breaking you, not because you are weak, but because you are finally strong enough to choose what Allah wants for you. Your healing begins the moment your tolerance ends. And from that moment forward, your life will never be the same. 4 boundaries are a form of worship. A believing woman must understand something deeply rooted in Islam. Protecting her heart, her faith, and her dignity is not selfishness, it is worship. Allah did not command you to make yourself available to harm. He did not create your soul to be trampled by the emotions, demands, or manipulations of others. When you establish boundaries, you are not pushing people away from you. You are placing yourself closer to Allah. Every time you say no to what weakens your iman, drains your energy, or disturbs your peace, you are saying yes to obedience. And obedience is not only found in prayer and fasting, it is found in how you guard your soul. A woman who learns this stops apologizing for protecting what Allah entrusted to her. She no longer confuses silence with righteousness or endurance with virtue. She realizes that allowing repeated harm into her life is not patience. It is neglecting a trust that Allah placed in her care. Many women believe that being kind means having no limits. But Islam never taught you to dissolve yourself for the comfort of others. The Prophet ﷺ lived with mercy, but he also lived with boundaries. He withdrew when needed. He refused what was harmful. He protected his time, his heart, and his mission. The believer follows that same example. When you set boundaries, you are following prophetic wisdom. You are choosing to walk in balance instead of emotional chaos. You are saying, my relationship with Allah matters more than anyone's convenience. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. This is not coldness, it is consciousness. A woman who knows this begins to feel lighter, calmer, and more present in her worship because her heart is no longer exhausted by battles she was never meant to fight. Boundaries also protect your intentions. When you allow every person access to your thoughts, emotions, and time, your heart becomes scattered. Your focus weakens. Your worship becomes heavy. But when you learn to guard your space, your heart regains strength. You begin to pray with presence. You begin to remember Allah with peace. You begin to feel the sweetness of faith returning. This is why boundaries are not barriers to love, they are bridges to tranquility. They allow you to give from a place of stability instead of desperation. They allow your relationships to grow on respect instead of exhaustion. And they allow your soul to breathe again under the protection of Allah's guidance. A woman who worships through boundaries does not explain herself endlessly. She does not argue with people who refuse to understand her. She simply chooses what aligns with her iman and steps away from what does not. She knows that Allah sees every quiet decision. Every moment she resists people's pressure for the sake of her faith becomes a form of ibadah. Every time she protects her heart from spiritual harm, Allah writes reward. This understanding transforms her life. She becomes steady instead of shaken, anchored instead of anxious. Her emotional world becomes calmer because her spiritual foundation is secure. There will be people who resist your boundaries. They will accuse you of changing, becoming distant, or being difficult. But what they are truly witnessing is your growth. They are watching you step out of emotional chaos and into spiritual clarity. They are seeing a woman who no longer sacrifices herself to keep others comfortable, and that shift will challenge those who benefited from your silence. Do not be disturbed by their reaction. The moment you choose Allah over approval, you will always face resistance, but you will also gain peace that no one can take from you. Boundaries teach you to choose long-term serenity over short-term comfort. It is easy to stay silent to avoid conflict. It is harder to speak the truth with wisdom and walk away when necessary. But that harder path leads to healing. It leads to self-respect. It leads to spiritual elevation. When a woman walks this path, she becomes deeply connected to her Lord because she is no longer compromising her faith to preserve broken attachments. A heart that honors boundaries becomes a heart that trusts Allah more. You stop clinging to people. You stop fearing abandonment. You stop overgiving out of insecurity. You realize that what is written for you will never miss you, and what is not written for you cannot be forced to stay. This knowledge brings immense relief. It frees you from the emotional chains that once controlled your decisions. It allows your soul to rest in the certainty of Allah's plan. When you practice boundaries as worship, your entire life begins to change. You choose healthier environments, you build stronger relationships, you carry yourself with dignity, and your faith becomes steady because your heart is no longer bleeding from constant emotional neglect. You begin to feel protected not because life is perfect, but because your soul is no longer exposed to what weakens it. A woman who understands this becomes powerful in the quietest way. She does not chase validation. She does not seek permission to honor herself. She moves with the calm confidence of someone who knows Allah is pleased with her choices. Her peace becomes her language. Her restraint becomes her strength, and her boundaries become her shield. This is why boundaries are worship. They are obedience in action. They are trust in motion. They are faith translated into daily life. And when a woman lives this way, she does not just survive the world, she rises above it under the protection of Allah. 5 strong women walk with purpose, not approval. A strong believing woman reaches a point in her life when she understands that approval is one of the weakest foundations a heart can build upon. People's opinions shift like the wind, but purpose rooted in Allah stands firm. When a woman begins to live for the sake of Allah, her direction becomes clear, and her heart no longer trembles at the thought of being misunderstood. She stops adjusting herself to be digestible for others and begins aligning herself with what pleases her Lord. That shift is not loud, but it is life-changing. It brings stability to her choices, courage to her voice, and peace to her soul. She no longer asks, "Do they like me?" but instead asks, "Is Allah pleased with me?" And when that becomes her standard, everything else falls into place. Purpose-driven women do not allow their emotions to be controlled by the approval of people. They understand that living for validation is a form of quiet captivity. Every time you seek permission from others to be who Allah created you to be, you imprison your potential. A woman who walks with purpose walks with clarity. She knows her values, she knows her mission, she knows her limits. And she moves forward even when the crowd does not applaud. Her strength does not come from applause, it comes from conviction. She learns that silence from others does not mean she is on the wrong path. Sometimes it simply means she is walking a road that was meant only for her. When a woman stops chasing approval, she begins to attract respect. There is something powerful about a person who is not desperate to be accepted. They speak with sincerity. They act with intention. They do not betray their principles for temporary comfort. This kind of woman does not need to explain herself to everyone because her life reflects her integrity. She chooses peace over popularity and depth over display. She does not waste her energy proving her worth because she knows her worth was written by Allah long before anyone else formed an opinion. A purpose-driven woman also learns to be comfortable with being alone, not lonely, but selective. She understands that not everyone deserves access to her heart, her time, or her inner world. She becomes mindful of her relationships and protective of her spirit. When people drift away because she refuses to compromise her values, she does not panic. She trusts that Allah removes what no longer serves her growth. She knows that her journey requires certain sacrifices, and she makes them with grace. Walking with purpose means making decisions that may not be popular, but are always aligned with truth. It means choosing discipline over distraction, growth over comfort, and sincerity over show. A woman who lives this way does not crumble when tested. She bends in humility before Allah, but she does not break under pressure from people. Her heart remains anchored, even when the world around her feels unstable. Strong women are not loud. They are consistent. They are not reactive. They are reflective. They do not compete for attention. They cultivate excellence. They do not follow trends blindly. They follow values faithfully. This kind of strength is rare, and that is why it stands out. When a woman commits to purpose, her presence becomes meaningful. Her words carry weight, and her life becomes a testimony of faith in action. There will be moments when her choices are questioned, when people misunderstand her intentions, when she feels the weight of walking alone. But in those moments, she remembers why she started. She remembers that Allah sees her struggle, her sincerity, and her effort. And that knowledge becomes her comfort. She no longer measures success by how many people approve of her, but by how deeply she lives her values. Purpose gives her direction when emotions try to confuse her. It keeps her grounded when praise tries to inflate her. It keeps her humble when achievements begin to grow. She understands that everything she has is from Allah, and everything she becomes is by His guidance. That awareness shapes her humility and strengthens her resolve. When a woman walks with purpose, she becomes a source of calm in a restless world. Her life may not be flashy, but it is full. It may not impress everyone, but it inspires those who are ready to grow. She does not seek the spotlight, yet she carries light within her. And that light never dims because it is fueled by faith. This is the woman who rises quietly, stands firmly, and lives intentionally. She is not chasing approval, she is answering a calling, and that calling is written by Allah Himself. 6. When you rise, Allah elevates you. There is a sacred principle in Islam that many overlook. Elevation from Allah always follows inner rising. Before Allah changes your position in life, He changes your posture of the heart. When a woman decides to rise from fear, from weakness, from attachment to what diminishes her, and from habits that drain her soul, Allah responds with doors she never imagined. This rising is not loud. It does not begin with people noticing. It begins in the unseen spaces of intention, in the quiet moments of prayer, in the silent refusal to remain where your faith is shrinking. When a woman chooses obedience over comfort, discipline over distraction, and Allah over approval, she has already begun her elevation, even if the world has not yet witnessed it. Every step a woman takes toward Allah is met with divine support. She may feel alone in the beginning. She may face resistance from those who benefited from her staying small. She may struggle as she lets go of familiar patterns that once defined her. But Allah does not abandon those who walk toward Him. He strengthens them. He steadies their hearts. He grants them clarity when confusion tries to return. And slowly, almost without her noticing, her life begins to change. Her decisions become wiser. Her boundaries become firmer. Her faith becomes deeper. This is how Allah elevates, not through instant miracles, but through sustained transformation. A woman who rises spiritually begins to see the world differently. She no longer measures her worth by relationships, achievements, or attention. She measures it by sincerity, consistency, and closeness to her Lord. That shift changes everything. When Allah becomes her reference point, every other opinion loses its power. She walks through trials with composure. She receives blessings with humility. She becomes unshaken by what once disturbed her, because her foundation is no longer built on circumstances, but on certainty. When Allah elevates a woman, He does not simply give her more, He gives her better. Better understanding, better discernment, better company, better opportunities, and most importantly, better peace. Her heart becomes a place of refuge rather than a battlefield. Her prayers become sincere conversations rather than desperate cries. Her days become purposeful rather than rushed. This is the reward of rising, not the applause of people, but the tranquility of the soul. There will be moments when she looks back at who she used to be, the woman who tolerated too much, feared too often, and doubted herself constantly, and she will barely recognize her, not because she became someone else, but because she finally became who she was meant to be. Allah does not elevate a woman to impress the world. He elevates her to align her with her true identity as a servant of Him. Rising also teaches her patience. Elevation does not happen overnight. There are seasons of preparation, seasons of struggle, seasons of waiting. But each season carries wisdom. Each delay carries protection. Each hardship carries a lesson that strengthens her for what is coming. A woman who trusts this process never rushes Allah. She walks with Him. And when the time is right, He opens doors that no human effort could have unlocked. A woman who has been elevated by Allah carries a certain calm. She is not easily shaken by loss or inflated by gain. She understands that everything comes from Allah and returns to Him. This understanding anchors her. It keeps her grounded even as her life expands. She becomes someone others feel safe around because her presence reflects peace rather than chaos. When you rise, Allah elevates you not only in position, but in character. Your words become more thoughtful, your reactions become more measured, your intentions become more pure. And through that internal elevation, your external world begins to shift. Opportunities appear, relationships change, paths open, but the greatest elevation happens within. Your heart becomes closer to its creator. Never underestimate the power of one sincere decision to rise. One moment of choosing Allah over fear. One moment of choosing truth over comfort. One moment of choosing growth over stagnation. That moment can change the direction of your entire life. So rise even when it is hard. Rise even when you feel unseen. Rise even when you are afraid. Because when you rise for the sake of Allah, Allah elevates you in ways the world could never offer. You were not created to survive this world. You were created to rise within it. When you choose strength over fear, Allah strengthens your path. When you choose dignity over desperation, Allah honors your heart. When you protect your soul, Allah protects your future. So stop being soft with what is breaking you. Start being strong with what Allah entrusted to you. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt. And this time you will rise.